Every evening, at exactly 5 o'clock, a small gray cat climbed onto the windowsill of a fading blue house and waited for someone who never came home. The neighbors saw him there so often that after a while he became part of the street itself, like the cracked mailbox, like the rusted gate, like the dying rose bush beneath the front porch. No one could pass that house without glancing at the window and seeing him, always watching, always waiting. His name was Momo. People began to ask the same quiet question. Why did he keep waiting? Why sit there through the cold, through the dark, through the hunger, as though love alone could bring someone back? Perhaps because no one had explained to him that some goodbyes happen without words, and some hearts are too loyal to understand when the waiting is over. Long before winter hollowed out the house, Momo belonged to an old man named Elias. Elias was a retired pianist with trembling hands and tired eyes, the kind of man who moved slowly but loved gently. He found Momo years earlier beneath a market cart during a thunderstorm. The kitten was soaked through, shivering, too weak even to cry properly. Elias bent down with aching knees, took off his scarf, and wrapped the tiny gray body inside it. Then he held the kitten against his chest and said in a voice almost lost beneath the rain, "There you are, you're coming home with me." And from that day on, Momo was never alone again. Their life was small, but it was full. Each morning, Elias sat at the old upright piano in the front room and played soft, wandering melodies while Momo slept beside him on the bench. When sunlight spilled through the curtains, it warmed the cat's fur until he looked silver instead of gray. When evening came, Elias poured milk into a chipped saucer and spoke to him as though speaking to an old friend. "You wait for me, little heart," he would whisper when leaving the house. "I always come back." And for years he did. No matter the weather, no matter the hour, no matter how tired he looked when he opened the gate, he always came back. And Momo, with the complete faith only animals seem capable of, believed that promise with his whole heart. Then, one winter morning before sunrise, the world changed without warning. A harsh light flashed across the walls. An ambulance stopped outside the house. Voices entered the house. Strange footsteps crossed the floorboards. Drawers opened. Someone called Elias's name again and again. Momo hid beneath the piano, his body pressed low against the floor, his ears flattened with fear. From there, he watched them carry Elias through the room beneath a pale blanket. One of Elias's hands hung motionless at the edge of the stretcher. Momo stared at that hand. It had always reached for him, always scratched beneath his chin, always returned. But this time, it did not move. And when the front door closed, the house became silent in a way it had never been before. A few relatives came later that day. They opened cabinets, took framed photographs, folded coats into boxes, spoke in hushed voices that made grief sound practical. No one noticed the gray cat hiding in the corner. Or maybe they did notice him and simply did not know what to do with a creature whose whole life was tied to someone already gone. By evening, the house was emptier. By night, it felt abandoned. At exactly 5 o'clock, Momo jumped onto the windowsill and looked toward the road. He was waiting for Elias, just as he always had. The first day passed, then another. Then another. The heater stopped working, the rooms grew cold, dust settled over the piano keys, snow began to gather along the edge of the porch. Still, Every evening at 5, Momo climbed to the same window. At first, his eyes were bright, his ears lifted at every passing sound. A car door closing, footsteps on the pavement, the creak of the gate next door. Every sound could have been Elias. Every silence became its own kind of wound. He did not understand hospitals. He did not understand death. He only understood a promise: I always come back. So he waited as if faith could keep a heart beating somewhere far away. A girl from next door began to notice him. Her name was Lena. She could not have been older than 10, but she carried a sadness in her eyes that made her look older in certain light. The first time she left food on the porch, Momo did not touch it until long after she had gone. The second time, she stayed across the sidewalk watching. The third time, she whispered, "It's okay, I won't hurt you." But Momo did not come to her. He only ate enough to survive, then returned to the window, because hunger was smaller than hope, and hope, though cruel, was the only thing he had left. Winter deepened. The tat who had once glowed in warm sunlight became thin and fragile. His fur lost its shine. His ribs pressed against his skin. Even jumping onto the sill became difficult. But each day, as the hour approached, he gathered himself, slowly, painfully, with the last of his strength, and he climbed back to the window. As though loyalty was stronger than the body that carried it, as though love could ignore the laws of this world and reopen the front gate. Lena began visiting more often. Sometimes she sat on the porch in silence. Sometimes she spoke through the door about school, about snow, about nothing at all. Maybe she understood that grief does not always need answers. Sometimes it only needs someone willing to stay nearby. Then one evening, Lena found the front door unlatched. She stepped inside the cold house and called softly into the dark. No answer came. She found Momo curled beside the piano, wrapped in Elias's old scarf. He looked impossibly small. The room was blue with dusk. Dust drifted in the air. The piano stood silent, as if it too had been waiting for hands that would never return. Lena knelt beside him and gently slipped her arms under his frail body. Momo barely resisted, but even then, as weak as he was, he turned his head toward the window. So Lena carried him there. Outside, snow fell in slow spirals through the evening light. The road was empty. The gate stood still. The world seemed to pause with him. Then the church bells began to ring, 5 times. At the first bell, Momo lifted his ears. At the second, he opened his eyes a little wider. At the third, a soft purr rose from his chest, faint, broken, but unmistakable. Lena held her breath, and then she saw it, a change in his face. Not fear, not pain, not confusion, recognition, as though somewhere beyond the frost on the glass, beyond the falling snow, beyond the reach of human sight, someone had finally come home. In Lena's arms, Momo took one slow breath, then another, then one so small it almost wasn't there. And then, nothing. The bells stopped. The room fell silent. Lena pressed her face into his fur and cried quietly, as if speaking too loudly might disturb whatever peace had come to him in the end. She stayed there long after he was gone, holding the little body that had loved with such impossible faith. Beside her, Elias's scarf rested across her lap, and for one unbearable moment, the room felt full again, not with life, but with reunion. The next morning, Lena buried Momo beneath the garden window where the evening light always fell warmest. She placed the old scarf beside him. Then she set a cracked porcelain saucer above the small grave, half buried in snow. The house behind her was still empty, but the window no longer looked like a place of waiting. It looked like a place where love had stayed until the very end. Years later, Lena would still remember him, not as a stray cat, not as a sad story people told in whispers, but as a small gray soul who taught her something most people never learn: that love does not become less real simply because it ends in sorrow, that loyalty can survive confusion, that grief can look like faith, that even the smallest heart can carry a promise farther than the strongest person ever could.